This video is going to be all about my love for fig wasps. And be warned, by the end of the video, you might develop a serious affection for them as well. And I love them so much. This is not even my first video on YouTube about them. 10 years ago, when I was in high school, we had this TED Talk spin-off called Muki Talks. And I made a video talking about fig wasps way back in high school, and I'm still just as fascinated by them. But before we talk about fig wasps and the photograph that I'm painting off of, so this photograph was taken around 9 or 10 years ago, and I wanted to talk about why this photograph is so important to me and why fig wasps themselves symbolize so much that I love about nature, and that's why it's so important to me. So before we start talking about the photograph or the fig wasps themselves, I want to talk about the fig, because the fig is not a fruit. It's a cluster of flowers, and like any other flower, they need to be pollinated, and that is when the fig wasps come in. There are two types of fig wasp that I'll cover in this video: the pollinating fig wasp and the parasitic fig wasps. The easiest way to differentiate between the pollinating and the parasitic is to look at their ovipositor. That is the organ they use, the injection-like organ they use to lay eggs. The pollinating fig wasps will have a short ovipositor, whereas the parasitic fig wasps, the one I'm painting, will have a really long ovipositor, many times the length of its body. So now let's get started with the story of the pollinating fig wasp. Imagine the mother, fertilized, mature, full of pollen, tries to squeeze her way through the small opening in front of the fig. The opening is so tight, while squeezing herself in, she loses her antenna, some of her legs, and her wings. She's almost at the brink of death by the time she enters the fig. Once she's in, she'll walk around and end up pollinating a few of the flowers. She will lay eggs in some of the flowers as well, and with the eggs she will also secrete some chemicals that will cause that flower to turn into this bulbous gall. That gall will provide food for the growing larva of the fig wasp. And once the female lays the egg and the chemicals, that flower cannot make seeds anymore. But she doesn't lay eggs in all the flowers because there's so many of them. But here you might think of this potential imbalance, because initially it seems this beautiful mutualistic relationship, right? The fig is providing a nice nursery for the fig wasp, and the fig wasp is pollinating the fig. Everyone is happy. But what happens when there is too many fig wasps? If there's too many fig wasps, they will lay eggs in all the flowers, and none of the flowers will turn into seeds, and the fig will lose in this relationship. So there has to be something maintaining the balance between the fig and the pollinating fig wasps, right? Otherwise they won't survive. Like, figs have been around for over 90 million years with fig wasps, and their relationship is really old. There's no way they would have lasted 90 million years if this imbalance was possible. And that is where the parasitic fig wasp comes in. The parasitic fig wasps, the females, they don't worry about squeezing their way in and losing their limbs and their wings just in order to lay eggs. They have this really long ovipositor. They will just sit on the surface of the fig and inject their eggs straight in. And the cool part is, once the larva hatches, and the larva of the parasitic fig wasps, many times they hatch faster, and then they will eat the eggs or the developing larvae of the pollinating fig wasp. And initially we think of this as a parasitic behavior, something that is harmful and that might not benefit neither the pollinator, of course, but also the fig. But these parasitic fig wasps play a crucial role in controlling the population of the pollinating fig wasp, and that creates this harmonious, three-way harmonious relationship that I found so poetic and so fascinating, especially considering that there's around 850 species of figs. Each of the species has its own species of fig wasp and many species of parasitic fig wasps. It's amazing the kind of diversity these plants support. And now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about this photograph in particular that I'm using as the reference photo. So this was during a summer in high school, when I was in high school, and I was fascinated by fig wasps and I wanted to get pictures, but these fig wasps are tiny. It's really hard to get photographs of them, and it's hard to find them in steady, and especially if you want to photograph parasitic fig wasp. I think the big challenge is they're so small, but their ovipositor is so long that it's really hard to have the whole ovipositor and the details of the fig wasp, the parasitic fig wasp, in one frame and have a good clarity. But I noticed that there were some times, like for instance in this photograph, when they just emerge out of the fig and they're cleaning their ovipositor, is when they create this loop. Or even when they inject while they're injecting the eggs into the fig, they create a loop, and those are few moments when you can get the whole organism in one frame. So to click this photograph, I had to go find this big fig tree, and I stayed I stayed around that fig tree for hours just looking at figs, and there were so many figs that were fallen on the ground, and there were other flies and ants, and the figs were rotting, some were moldy, and it smelled like you could smell the alcohol in the air from the rotting figs. And I was standing, actually I was laying. To get these photographs you have to go to the eye level of the fig wasp, so I was laying in this bed of rotting fig wasps in 40 degrees Celsius Indian summer heat, just trying to get a good photo. And then I noticed this fig that had fallen and burst open, and on the edge of that fig stood a parasitic fig wasp cleaning its ovipositor with this beautiful pink magenta ripe fig background. And at that moment I knew I had my photograph. I slowly moved my camera, ensured that I had good light conditions, turned my flash on, slowly focused without scaring this tiny insect, and clicked a photo. And as soon as I clicked it, I knew I had the perfect shot. And I remember being so happy when I got that photograph then, and I'm so happy today painting it now, reliving that memory, reliving that image, that art that was in my mind, and I was able to bring it to life. But also the poetry of nature that fascinated and made the art relevant in the first place. And that is what I wanted to express through this painting, is this beautiful poetry that the fig wasps and their three-way relationship with the fig and the pollinating fig wasp truly convey. I hope next time you pass by a fig tree, you take a moment to just stare, maybe open up a couple of figs and see, you might find a friend, a familiar friend inside. Hey there, Anish here. Hope you enjoyed this video and this painting. This is actually a different wasp I painted, and this is the painting you saw right now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe for more videos and stories like these. Comment below if there are some other topics that you want me to tackle. And as always, I'll see you next time.